Welcome to 360 Pulse Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Sertle, and I'm thrilled to bring you the latest in 360-degree imaging and immersive technology. As our world becomes more interconnected, Circle Optics technology is leading the way in accelerating the delivery of life-saving resources, enhancing aerospace safety, and transforming how we engage with immersive experiences. On 360 Pulse, we explore the groundbreaking developments and features and innovations driving this future. Join us as we drive into the heart of immersive technology and the bold ideas shaping our tomorrow. Today's guest is Don Berchoff, CEO of TruWeather Solutions. He's bringing 40 years of experience in the weather and aviation industry to his current leadership role. His extensive career includes a 24-year career in the United States Air Force, where he continuously refined weather operations by leveraging immersive technology and weather risk management principles to improve mission readiness, effectiveness, and efficiency across a very diverse weapon systems in general, and directing science and technology projects at the National Weather Service, where he managed a multidisciplinary teams of both scientists, data experts, and engineers. At TruWeather, Berchoff pioneered the development of innovative software as a service platform that's designed to enhance weather and analytics for the emerging drone and air taxi industries. So that's a lot to say, Don. Glad that you're here. You've had such a long and varied career in the weather industry with your military service and also the private sector. How did your time at the Air Force and your time leading complex projects in National Weather Service motivate you to start TruWeather Solutions?
Well, I will tell you, I've been very fortunate in my life to have gotten lucky enough to pick a path. And sometimes you don't know where that path's going. The Yogi Berra once said, if you see a fork in the road, take it. And, there was many times in my career, even starting as a student, that I didn't know where my journey was going to take me. But the one thing I did know is that at 7 years old, I wanted to be a meteorologist. And during that time, I would keep diaries and notes. And you might say that by the time I got into college, I had my 10,000 hours, Malcolm Gladwell type thing. And so when I got through school and I got my meteorology degree, I didn't know where I was going to go because this was 1984 and President Reagan had put a moratorium on hiring in the National Weather Service. At that time, that was the biggest career path for a meteorologist. You were either going to go get your degree, master's or PhD, and I wasn't doing that because I had just finished differential equations and I was done with that. We could go to commercial, but it wasn't as good as it is today. The amount of money you can make. You go to weather service or you go to the military. When the Air Force, when the military came along and the weather service wasn't an option anymore, I just joined, and it's going to only be 4 years. And it turned into 24 years. But during that time, the application of the art of weather and applying that to real world mission critical operations where, people's lives depended on it, or, having to be successful at achieving your military objectives. Weather was very much appreciated in the military. And so I learned a lot about how to hone the trade and how to really optimize that connection between weather and mission effectiveness. And, in 2000, I actually helped to improve Air Mobility Command operations around the world. They were flying 10,000 airlift and tanker missions a year at a dispatch center at Scott Air Force Base. They were averaging 5,000 mission delays a year due to weather. And I got in there and I looked at it and I said, this is not necessary. We're dropping good weather data on the floor. People are not using it properly. Decisions are being made. And I said, we can use a risk management framework. And so my boss, to his credit, 2-star general, said, Don, tell me what we have to do to fix it. And in 1 year, we cut the delays from 5,000 to 1,800, and we saved the Air Force $200 million. But more importantly, it's not about the money savings. It's about freeing up assets that they were limited assets. So we actually got more cargo movement. So that was really where I figured out this weather risk piece and said, this could be applied to decisions. We didn't get better improvement in data. It was how we use the data, right? That's the first side of this, and training the decision makers on how to use the data. And then I ended my career in the Air Force by running an Air Force base. I ran Manas Air Base in Central Asia, which was the main staging base in Afghanistan. So it was a logistics base. And I got to apply my trade of weather and logistics and aviation into that base. And I have great stories about how we kept the base open during major, like we had 12 inches of snow in 5 hours. And most airports would shut down. But because I knew it was coming, because I owned all the equipment, and because I can get everybody postured for it, we wound up getting 60% of our sorties off that day, which was really amazing. I left the weather, that was my military and my operational learning. Then I went into the weather service, and I was a science technology director, and I got to see all this great technology that wasn't being used from weather. It was all trapped in labs and universities. And I said, how do we get this out? I couldn't get it out. I had a $130 million budget, and I couldn't get it out. It wasn't going to happen. The system wasn't built for it. Weather was evolving so fast. Technology was evolving so fast. The system couldn't keep up. So I left. And in 2015, I started TruWeather. And the whole mission was to unlock the power of science and technology trapped in labs and universities and apply it to real problems in the commercial sector and society and accelerate that out so we could really have impact. So we kind of work with the government, but where the government comes up short, we work around it and we get those capabilities out, and then we close these gaps and we get those economic benefits.
Well, I wish I had, to me, I'm thinking of like you literally had a bird's eye view of both the problem and the resources. And it kind of, it takes that kind of both foresight and contextual intelligence in order to connect those dots. I've never heard the phrase the art of weather before. So I almost, listening to that, I kind of got stuck on that. Do you want to say more about the art of weather just as a term, or do you want us to keep going?
Well, there's a couple of terms that I've coined. I've been around a long time, and I try to find simplicity in how we communicate. Weather is still an art. It's not 100% science, because science implies you have data, you have enough data, and you have enough knowledge and understanding of what's happening to apply some kind of situational awareness. We today have gaps in the atmosphere below 5,000 feet. We're not measuring winds. We're not measuring cloud height, ceiling visibility, over 97% of land masses. So we run models and we try to do the best we can with that data, but there's such gaps in it that we can't pick up the micro weather. So where the art comes in is where you're a forecaster, you build heuristics over many, many, many years like I did. And you learn what's going to happen without anybody else knowing what's going to happen, because the data won't tell you it's going to happen.
Wow.
And that's the art of weather.
Yeah.
And so I could tell you one time I had a colonel when I was a lieutenant, because I was good. I had 10,000 hours by the time I went in the military. And I was ahead of a lot of my peers in that. And he came in and he said, Don, you have such an imagination. Because I would say this low pressure is going to develop on the coast off of Norfolk. And the models that we had then were very raw, and it didn't show it. And I said, well, sir, I just know it will. And he goes, you have imagination. Of course, the next day, the low pressure developed. And but that's the art. That's the art of weather.
Well, geez, some of my family are pretty competitive sailboat racers, and I'm thinking all they'd want to do is say, let's invite them to go sailing. But, one thing that would be totally scalable for all of our audience are the risk management principles. I know it's too much of it. We could do a whole program on risk management principles, but if you think of, and I know in AUVSI and in some of our Genius New York shared communities, our audience, many of them are founders. What are a couple of risk management principles that you used that might actually scale to how they're designing their businesses?
Well, I could definitely, I like to focus on what I know. Obviously, it's funny you bring this up, because last night I was coming back from an event downtown. It was a AUVSI event, and I had a conversation with somebody that is out of Oklahoma, and we were talking about our military career, and I've done some pretty crazy things in places that I had to take some risk. We were in Manas, Central Asia, former country of the Soviet Union. They were not happy that we were there, but they let us. They tolerated us. We had gone to Air Force Base, which was the Russian base in the same country as our base. It was the only place in the world we had a Russian air base and Air Force US. And we were playing all these cat and mouse games all the time. And I have to say I enjoyed it. I grew up in New York, so I love cat and mouse games. But there was a risk management, a lot of risk management approach here. And I came home last night and I said, I'm going to have to write a book someday, The Business of Risk. And because everything we do in business is always a trade-off. And, there's no black and white as an entrepreneur. I'm sorry. I don't care what anybody says. The people that work for you want black and white, right? Because they just want to know, hey, tell me what I have to do. I will make it work. Why do you keep changing your mind? Why do you, and the thing is that I tried to explain to somebody the other day, there's not a right or wrong answer to this problem. So don't get upset if we don't take your opinion 100%. It's a shade of gray. And I got to manage the risk. I got to look at all the data I can collect and say, if I make this decision, what's going to happen there? If I make this decision, what's going to happen there? That's all risk management, right? That's what running a business is about. So and of course in weather, I have to do that all the time in forecasting because there's no certainty. And so you got to look at probabilities and you got to use your art and your heuristics to guide you in a way that maybe other people can't understand because they haven't had the full experience of life in the things that you're good at that you have.
Right.
And that's not anybody's fault. It's just what it is. And, you used to hate it when your mom said, just don't do that. Why? Because I said so, right? We couldn't get into it. Well, I've seen 3 people crack their head open trying to make this maneuver, and I'd rather you not crack your head open. It's risk management, right?
I love that. And, even though you're a seasoned, professional, I still hear a 7-year-old boy in you, in the joy of, the craft is really, it's like, I'm happier now talking to you simply because I feel like this innocence and this curiosity is really, really wonderful. Let's move a little bit more towards innovation. TruWeather Solutions has developed a highly innovative, software as a service weather analytics platform. I'd really appreciate you elaborating on the platform and how it's being used right now.
So, coming out of the weather service and having a lot of now experience in systems engineering, I'm not a systems engineer. I'm not I'm just a guy that learns, right? And jack of all trades, master of none, except meteorology. I'm pretty good at that. But, I had 50 systems engineer in the weather service under me. I had 50 scientists. And so what happened is I looked at this problem of aviation and I said, the challenge we have is we have all legacy systems right now that anytime we want to plug in something new, it's $10 million, 5 years, 10 years. And it's, it's never going to get just right either. It's all because you have to wrap code and all this. I said, we can't do this. When I saw the new drone industry, I said, this is it. This is our opportunity to actually really transform. And it was only because there was an opportunity that was presented. And that opportunity was this concept of UTMs, unmanned aerial system traffic management. And that was going to be a data performance standards. And the FAA was willing to have a federated system of UTM providers, and they would allow services. So that was the first break. It wasn't like the FAA said, we got to do everything. So when I saw that, I said, okay, I'm going to build a brand new weather system that's brand new, open architecture, the way I would build it as a weather person trying to support all these operations. And that's what we did. We started and we built this analytics engine that could take in different data sets. We can fuse them in different ways. We can apply them to specific mission types. We can customize it based on the end user's thresholds and things they care about. And then we add sensors on top of that. And the sensor piece is really important because we have so many gaps. And I said, if we could plug and play sensors into this platform without a lot of cost. In other words, if you go to another weather company and say, hey, I want to plug this sensor into this application, it's software work, right? But we built this from day one, knowing that that's what we wanted to do. So we have this very agile platform. It's going to scale. And, basically our resellers are going to be the UTMs who want to have a weather service that's cutting edge. And then their operators will say, hey, can I put some sensors out there for weather? And they'll go, yep, you can do that because TruWeather could take that data in. And then we could get that back out through our resellers to them on a one-stop shop. And they can use that for their flight planning, their route management, their asset management, what kind of drone we're going to fly. And so we're really taking that military mindset I had and things I heard, and then taking the technology and bringing it together to meet that operational need with some very advanced technology.
So I'm hearing, of course, huge amount of foresight, a lot of reverse engineering, and kind of the interoperability principle that that allowed that to happen. As TruWeather continues to expand, how are you approaching corporate governance? Particularly in the area of like company values, strategic vision, and then day-to-day operations. And then also there's the FAA governance question. So let's go micro, then we'll go macro.
Well, it's not, I was very fortunate. I had a chance to grow organizations in the Air Force. It's always nice when you do that with someone else's money first. So I was asked to build a regional weather center at Scott Air Force Base in 1998. And I was the first one in. There was no equipment. There was no people. There was nothing. And this was going to be a transformation from the base weather stations doing all the work to centers taking on some of the responsibility. And we were going to have to modernize this and get away from we used to do flight weather briefings over fax machines, over the phone. This is how they were operating in 1991. And we had 137 Army and Air Force units that we had to support. And they said to me, hey, we're going to give you 15 people to manage all that. And I said, we can't do that without automation. So we built this up. We were the first, we briefed pilots as on the first websites in the Air Force. We actually got pilots, even with 1,200 baud modems in the Army. I went and visited them, so I'll buy your freaking modem. We got to just make this work. And we actually transformed how weather information and briefings were relayed to pilots. I took that from 0 to 180 people in 2.5 years. And we were nominated for the Air Force Chief of Staff Team Excellence Award. And we also won Squadron of the Year in 2000. My point of all this is I went through this once before. And so I knew that, one, don't take shortcuts. Build the foundation very, very strong. Like it's extra work. It took me extra hours. But I knew later it was going to pay off because the way we built it, the culture was being built as we went along. And I made sure that when we layered in the next layer, the previous layer really understood the culture and what they were doing. And that really succeeded because I will tell you, by the third year, I was the commander. I was not working that hard. I mean, literally, I had that place running like butter. Everyone was taking care of all the problems. And I said, that's how I have to do TruWeather. So I'm following that same principle. Yeah. The difference is money, right? And I'm not going to lie. Nobody can know what it's like to be a founder unless you've been a founder. And, the buck stops with you, like Truman said. And when money runs out, there is no mother may I. So you have to really, manage your priorities. You've got to make sure that you have really good idea of what needs to happen first, second, and third. There's no waste. And but to maintain that culture is so important. It can become so easy to get sucked into, I'm running out of money, and you start just doing things without really thinking about the big picture. The last thing I do at night before I go to bed is, did I do anything today to disrupt the culture I want to build?
Oh my gosh.
In those activities. Because that is so important. It's so important.
It's just for a minute, like I just need to pause only because there's so much that you say and I want to make sure our listeners are keeping up. The question you ask yourself at night, say it again, please.
Did I do anything today to disrupt the culture I'm trying to build?
Wow. That is there's all of people, anybody listening has a question they need to ask at night about disrupting what it is that they intend. And I just think that's such a significant pause. I know you had more to say. I just didn't want to lose that point.
No. So now we go to FAA, right? So I knew that for us to totally disrupt the aviation weather business, which is not built, aviation weather is not built for this problem set. I could tell you it wasn't built for helicopters either, but we get away with it because there's people on the aircraft flying them. But when we go to unmanned uncrewed vehicles, there's no way you can know what's happening. And all the heuristics that a pilot had earned through the years is gone. I mean, if you're flying remotely from 1,000 miles from where your drone's flying, You're not even waking up in the same environment that your drone's flying. You can't know what's going on because our data is not good enough. So we had to close that gap. I knew that it meant that we had to crowdsource sensors, but the current weather rules are you have to use certified instruments, and they have to be ASOSs, and they're very expensive. They're $500,000 to $1 million a piece. That wasn't going to happen. We also need data above ground level. So I went to the FAA and I said, look, we got to change this, because right now we're all being delusional about what our weather system could do, even for current aviation. And it's not where we have to go, because we have the technology. Remember the bionic man? We have the technology. We just got to make sure that we allow the private sector to innovate. We can move quickly, but you got to change the rules. So what we did was got with the FAA. To their credit, they agreed, and we started working on the ASTM weather standard 4 years ago. It took 4 years. We got it published in January. And to their credit, it's going to allow for third-party weather providers to participate in this aviation weather system without the high bars that were in the past. It's going to use technology, and it's going to allow us to use different sensor types that are a lot lower cost that the user could put out along a route, up on a tower if you want to see winds. And as long as it meets a certain tier, as long as we know what we're getting, as long as we have a metadata, as long as it's reliable, as long as you can prove all that, it's going to be it'll be allowed. And that's huge. So that's going to open up the innovation. That's going to allow us to crowd the field with better weather data collection, which is going to close that gap that I worry about. And it's going to allow us to get a more efficient economics. I call it weather economics for drones. We're going to reduce the weather tax.
Wow. Looking ahead, though, what are some of the most exciting developments on the horizon for both TruWeather Solutions and the broader weather industry at large? I'm really wanting to see what you see as a futurist.
There's no one answer to solve weather problems. I want to make that clear, right? No ML. There's no magic. I used to say we don't have two magic beans that's going to create magic ML plant stock. ML has to have real data. Right. So weather machine learning is very limited about how it can really significantly improve forecasting. It could help speed up the current forecast process, but it may not produce much better results, except in certain areas, like in precipitation. So when your users out there hear somebody throwing around ML and weather, and we're going to do all this magic stuff, it's very limited to what it could do today, because you need data. You need a training data set that's going to be at the same scale as what you're trying to solve. And right now, we don't have weather data at that scale for micro weather. So you have to close the data gaps first. And that's rule number one. Those data gaps are going to come being closed by really amazing technologies that nobody knows about and has thought about. Satellites are always important. We have to continue to use them, but they're not going to solve every problem below 5,000 feet because they attenuate. They're not cheap, and they're hard to turn data around fast enough. If you were trying to, be responsive, in a urban canyon where you're trying to get the winds figured out between buildings where you have a vertiport, satellite's not going to solve that problem. So what we have to do is be smart about how we use sensors and derive data from other sources. And so I'm not going to share with you all those technologies because I'm the one that's going to unleash them. But the bottom line is there's things that would blow your mind that we could bring to bear on this problem. And we're working those right now to close these gaps and get ubiquitous. The keys in the future is if you want the last mile weather to match with your last mile drone delivery, you need data, all right? You can't use what is out there today and expect some miracle to occur.
When you're ready to be public about these, I can just see, if anyone here could see his face, it looks literally like a 7-year-old who has a very good secret. My hope is that you'll call us and we'll have another program so that we can amplify first.
You'll be the first to know once we're ready to do that. And yes, I am. I have to tell you, I'm having so much fun.
I can hear it. Because
I am a curious guy. The reason I loved weather is because it was hard to solve, and I just love hard problems. And I'm not satisfied. Hard doesn't stop what we need to do. There are technologies, and I am having a lot of fun finding those technologies. and helping these young companies who have them define a path for success for themselves, as well as enable our platform and make us better.
Tackling complexity, we have Don Berchoff, CEO of TruWeather Solutions. I want to thank all of you for tuning into the 360 Pulse. We extend our gratitude to our partners and supporters, the Institute of Optics, Genius New York, Luminate Accelerator, AFWorks, Cider Technologies, Archangel Imaging, and AUVSI. A special thank you to our producer, Scott Fitzgerald, and the team at RockFox Studios in Rochester, New York, the epicenter of optics innovation. Stay connected with us. Subscribe to our podcast. Follow us on X and LinkedIn. Join the conversation. We're always looking for stories about immersive technology and safety and any technology that deepens the human connection. And if you have a program idea, reach out to me directly at jennifer@circleoptics.com. Thank you for joining us.